I think we've got a couple minutes.
I'm gonna do something.
It's either that or swallow the gums. Good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for this panel on how DC can harness 5G to build a better city. My name is Kelsey Guyselman. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs at ITI here in DC. And I'm very excited to have two wonderful panelists with me here today. We first have Annamaria Konya Tannon, who is the Chief Evangelist for Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Innovation for the School of Engineering and Applied Science at George Washington University. She is the Executive Director of the GW Innovation Center, where her focus is cross-disciplinary social innovation. She's a tech entrepreneur and angel investor who's been involved in tech enterprise creation for more than 15 years, mostly in Silicon Valley. Previously, she was the founder and CEO of Acosta-Velez, a nonprofit corporation dedicated to advancing women-led technology companies. In addition, we have Mario Acosta-Velez, who is the Director of State Government Affairs and External Affairs for Verizon in the Mid-Atlantic region. He is responsible for regional philanthropy and corporate social responsibility, government affairs initiatives, stakeholder engagement, strategic partnerships, and community relations. He also leads on external stakeholder engagement and education on the benefits of advanced technologies, such as smart cities, small cells, and 5G. So I'm going to start off with each panelist giving a few moments of comments on their role and perspective on 5G technology to just sort of set the stage for the conversation that we'll be having today. So Annamaria, did you want to start?
Well, yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming today. I'm especially super excited having Ron and Iris in the first row, because one of the things what I'm doing, focusing on all-inclusive approach toward how we live. So for example, if you are old or young or disabled in any level, I want you to have the same access to everything what I have. And this is something what we are doing in the Innovation Center at George Washington University. I believe that, truly believe that 5G going to help me to accelerate that movement. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me and Verizon to be a part of this great event. We have worked with the DC Economic Partnership and many other groups in the city for a long time to help our communities understand the promise of advanced technologies. And there's a lot of talk right now about 5G in DC and what it will do for our communities and for our businesses. But when I look at this audience and the people attending today, I know that we have a lot of entrepreneurs as part of this community who are involved with the DC Economic Partnership and others. And I think this is a great opportunity to have a conversation about how this amazing technology that we're deploying across the United States, but certainly in DC, will help you as entrepreneurs and as organizations and residents and business leaders to help us bring this promise of 5G to the district and to help improve communications and access to services and many other great things that this will bring to our residents. So I look forward to this conversation today.
Thank you. So I think what would be helpful to start the conversation is to discuss what is 5G. We hear a lot about it. It's become sort of a buzzword of sorts in the tech space, but I think it would be really helpful to have a common understanding of what we're talking about when we say 5G. So Mario, did you have some thoughts that you could share on that?
Absolutely. Again, when I look at the audience, I wanted to ask people a few questions about the evolution of technology. how many of you remember when we could use a cell phone just to make a phone call? Okay, so that we have probably half of the audience. So that's what 1G gave us, the ability to use a cell phone to just make a phone call, to use voice. So for those of you who are here, probably also the other half of the room, and plus the ones who raised your hands, you probably remember when you were able to use those cell phones to send text messages. How many of you? All of you probably, right? So that's what 2G gave us. Now, when we were able then to use those smartphones to not only make a phone call or text messages, but actually to access the internet and search for information and research and all of those great things, that's what 3G gave us and was able to enable us to do. Then with 4G, that's when we started to experience not only video streaming, but many other connected services and devices. So when you look at that evolution from 1G to 4G, we experience how amazing this technology was able to enable us to enhance our communications and connectivity. Now we look at 5G, and we're still learning and envisioning what this amazing technology will create for the future. When we start looking at 5G, I just want to give you some examples of things that probably some of you have already thought about. Think about autonomous cars that will be enabled with the amazing 5G technology. When we look at smart communities and the impact that it will have on more smart traffic management or transportation or advancement in health care and remote health services and for residents and for businesses, and many other areas such as public safety and how it will enhance first responders' ability to more effectively address some of those challenges in our communities, and also how we will enhance education and how technology will be immersed in enhancing the educational experiences and preparation of the next workforce so they can leverage and harness the power of 5G. All of those things will be enabled by this technology, and we'll have a chance to go into more details about it. But I think what 5G we can summarize is as we call it, the 5th generation of wireless technologies, but this will have a massive impact in our lives, in how we live, in how we work, in how we play, in how we communicate and provide services to how a city like Washington, D.C. will enhance the provision of services to residents and businesses. There are a lot of both economic and community development benefits that this technology will bring to our city and to our region. And I hope that we can engage in more details about that today.
Sure, thank you so much. And Mario raises a really interesting point about 5G and the applications and use cases for 5G. And so, Annamaria, I'd love to hear your perspective on what does that mean for a community like DC? Obviously this is an area that has a lot of innovation, entrepreneurship, certainly a lot of policy making happening here in DC. And so what do you see as the impact of 5G for local citizens, local businesses, and those who work and travel and live in the DC region?
I feel like we're going to be hyper-connected. We're talking about, and many of you heard about the digital divide. We're talking about that probably 15, 20 years now. I feel that 5G is enable us to cross that digital divide finally and have equal access for everyone. One of the things that I learned, I did some research in the district. People who live in districts 6, 7, and 8, they don't have Wi-Fi in their homes. So their primary device is their smartphone. The smartphone is the one thing what they able to do research, look for medical advices, look for transportation. And in that areas, usually the connection is very patchy. This 5G network actually going to help us to have a seamless connection, and everyone will be connected no matter where you live. One of the things that I'm super excited about and I'm working on is how we could create an educational platform and an educational component which would be available for all. So I'll tell you a story. 2 minutes, I promise. When I was in school, or most of you were in school, we had textbooks, right? All of us, right? And that was quite boring to actually go through pages and pages and learn about cities and countries and all of those things. Think of that. You put on a goggle and glasses, but you just look in and you're saying, okay, I want to do my math homework. And your triangles and everything comes in life and you can move them and you would be able to actually solve a problem right there with some support without having the boring textbook, having, that I don't know that, I don't have any answer to that. Augmented reality would help you if you don't know some questions. It will be just, you click on it, you show that I don't know this, the answer gonna pop up and it helps you to solve that. So I see that this is really an equalizer and something which will enable everyone in DC to get the same access to the same things.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the interesting things about 5G is certainly that it does have a positive impact on the community, but at the same time, the community must welcome 5G networks into the area. And so I'd be curious to hear both of your thoughts on what can policymakers do to encourage carriers like Verizon to deploy, but also encourage citizens to eventually adopt the technology. So Mara, I don't know if you wanted to start.
Absolutely, that's certainly my area of work in the city. I wanted to mention something. You mentioned something really important about closing the digital divide. And that's something that as a company we have been working on for a long time to be able to bring the technology to all the communities, diverse communities that we serve. And when we look about deploying the technology here in the district, we want to make sure that all communities have access to it and that no community is left behind. And as part of that process then leads me to the community engagement piece and how we work with policymakers and organizations like this one to ensure that residents and businesses, because I think it's important to look at the overall picture, understand what the technology does and what it doesn't and how it will benefit them. From a policy maker's perspective, in DC we have been working for during the last year and a half or so with our local government to implement the framework that we need to be able to deploy this technology. We work closely with DC Council and the Department of Transportation to develop and now implement a series of small cells guidelines. And for those of you, I want to ask you, how many of you know what small cells are and what it does? Okay, how about the audience? Well, small cells is the infrastructure that we need to be able to develop and deploy the technology here in the district, such as 5G. This is a critical aspect of the work that we do, and these small cells guidelines that we currently have in the city will enable us to build this network and the infrastructure across the district to then be able to enhance the communication, the connectivity, and certainly deliver what we call deliver this promise of 5G to our residents and the district. And we want to make sure that all residents understand what this technology will do. So we have been partnering with council members, for example, to help educate not only their staffers but their constituents and the residents about what the technology does, what it doesn't do, but also what are the benefits and why it is so important to keeping DC competitive both for residents and for businesses. The other piece that we're doing is, and not only Verizon, there are other carriers that are also engaged in this community education effort. We are attending a lot of community meetings, ANC meetings, meeting with leaders to provide the information about what small cells are, what 5G is, in the deployment process, but to make sure that we're available to answer questions and address any concerns that residents have. And I think this is an important collaboration that we're implementing across the city to ensure, as I said, that no community is left behind and that they really understand the power and the promise of this technology.
So just to build on one of the points that you made, you talked about small cells. Could you explain the difference between what a small cell is and what a traditional sort of macro tower that you see in a usual cell network for 4G or 3G? And what does that mean in a community like DC in terms of size and impact on building and things like that?
Well, this small cells is, we call it small cells because they are equipment that will be installed on poles that are in the right-of-way.
And it's really the size of like a pizza box, basically,
right? This is small and it's closer to the user, which would then enable us to enhance the connectivity and the capability that people need, especially in high-density areas. And this is really is the infrastructure that we need to implement and to deploy in order to enhance the delivery of this technology and these services, especially in those high-density areas. And when we go into these communities, we provide information about what they are. We actually show pictures, and which I brought one today, didn't think about it, but how they look like and how they discreetly blend into the environment. So people understand how this infrastructure is developed and deployed in their communities.
Great, thank you. And Annamaria, did you want to address the conversation about adoption and consumer use of 5G technology in cities like DC?
Sure. I think, Mario really hit on how we have to look at residential but also commercial use. And I feel that 5G, it has a lot of benefits. A lot of benefits what we need to encourage to deploy as soon as possible. And if I'm correct, it's $300 billion to deploy 5G in the United States. So it's a lot of money spent on that. So I believe that will be spent by Verizon, AT&T, the other carriers. So that's something what they invest in, but we need to kind of advocate to understand why is it important for us to have that? Why is it important to have it in your neighborhood? And some people against 5G, and I think we have to address that too, because they feel that this is ruining the aesthetic of their neighborhood. I feel the way this little box is literally this size and wide. If you are working with designers, and I'm huge on working with industrial designers and architects who are able to discreetly blend this into the existing environment, I don't think it would bother anyone. Also, the other things what I do like to address, and I don't want to be the negative person here, but what are the health implications? Because many people worrying about what is it going to do to my health. So far, what we know, no problems were reported, and we haven't seen any health problems with 5G. But these are the things that we need to do research on and make sure the public is aware of what we found.
Sure.
Thank you. Annamaria, one of the things that we talked about previously was the role of 5G internationally. And I know that's something that you've spent some time in. So it might be helpful for the audience to hear a little bit about what's happening around the world with 5G deployment in terms of what communities are doing with the technology as it's becoming available elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So 10 years ago, I was working with the United Nations, the International Telecom Union, to focus on a deployment of green technologies to connect the rural areas into our large global community. Since then, we were wishing for 5G then. Finally, we are at the point where it's in deployment, and we're looking forward to 6G already. But with 5G, I have a couple of really cool examples, and I'm hoping you will enjoy it. You can look it up. It's really fun. It's called Me Plus Moo. And this is a connected cow farm. It's a dairy farm where each cow has a collar on, and the collar is monitoring what the cow is doing. So the 5G sensor's picking up this cow ate at 6 in the morning. The other cow ate at 7. This cow wanted to be scrubbed at 8 o'clock. This cow needs to be milked at 9. All this data is connected. And basically, the whole kind of automated dairy farm doing everything without having a human involvement. And the cows are actually happier this way because they know when they cannot really communicate what they want, but we actually know thanks for 5G. So I think that's a really cool thing. The other thing what I really enjoyed in Japan, now they actually monitoring oyster and fish farms and how they salt level and how the oyster feels about the farm, and the 5G sensor are actually helping the oyster to be bigger and tastier because we know what they want. Right. So I think it's really cool to know what is already there, and I think those are the things that we can adopt. One other one what I like to mention, it's really close to me, sorry. Really close to me, the bees. Bees in the city and how important it is to actually take care of our bees. The bee population is drastically dying out in cities because of pesticides and all of the other things that we're doing to it. But now they came up with a technology with a 5G sensor. You can actually know the health of each beehive. And it gives you a daily kind of status report, what as a beekeeper you have to do with your bees to be happy and healthy. So I really focused on agriculture, but it's so many other ways like healthcare and education, and I'm happy to talk about it, but later maybe.
No, I think these are all really interesting examples of things that are being built that utilize 5G networks and have applications we've never even thought about before. So it's a great example of what the network can do to enhance our lives in a whole variety of ways. And Mario, I know that Verizon's been very active in trying to foster innovation and developing these new applications for 5G. Could you talk a little bit about some of the efforts from the company?
Absolutely, and I think we are very excited about what is happening in DC, not only across the United States, but what Verizon is doing to foster innovation. And we not only lead in deployment, but also lead in innovation. And one of the very unique ways in which we are doing that is through our 5G labs. I don't know if some of you have heard about those amazing locations, and we have 5 across the United States, and these are spaces where we collaborate with researchers, universities, entrepreneurs, and people who are interested in developing the next, well, some people call killer app, to help solve some of the problems and the issues that we face in society and in business. It happens that in DC, we have one of those amazing 5G labs. How many of you knew that? Perfect. So half of the audience. So I'm glad that the other half then will learn about these. And in fact, we have an amazing 5G lab located at 2055 L Street. It's downtown, but it's also the home to the first 5G first responders lab. Each of these 5Gs across the nation focus on different areas, but the one here in DC is really innovating in the area of first responders. And basically what we are doing is collaborating with innovators, with people who have ideas on how to use the 5G network, the 5G technology, to not only test some of these concepts, but to bring them to reality in how we can address some of those public safety concerns and issues that impact our city. October 16 is a key date, so I want all of you to write that date down. From 3 to 6, we have an open house at this 5G, where we will be demonstrating some of these technologies and applications that have been developed by the people that we are collaborating with at the 5G lab, and they will be showcased. So if you want to learn about how we're innovating in public safety and first responders, and how this will enhance these first responders to more efficiently and effectively provide these services to the community here in the city, come to our 5G lab on October 16. You'll be able to see firsthand how this works and how the technology will be implemented. We have here a member of our 5G lab as well, so if you want to talk to us after this panel discussion, we'll be happy to give you more information and details about it. The other piece that I want to mention is it's along the same lines of public safety and first responders. I think that's, we have certainly realized that that's one of the key areas here in the city, important to our residents, to our business, to mayor's office, and to many others. So that's why we're investing in that area to bring those solutions here. And we partnered recently with the Economic Partnership, with mayor's office, and many other organizations to implement the DCX Challenge. Have you heard about that one? No? Okay. It's another way in which we are engaging entrepreneurs, people who have ideas on how to use the 5G network to address health and public safety issues in the city. So we had a challenge that has been completed, and today, right? Today we will be announcing the winners of this challenge and the applications that they were able to create and how they will use the 5G networking technology to implement those. So ask us or the DC Economic Partnership team when this will happen today. But those are two examples of how we are using the 5G network to foster innovation. The most important thing is to bring people together, bring communities together. We enable that as a carrier, as a technology company. We envision a future, we want to create it, but we can do it with the collaboration of people like the ones in this room, entrepreneurs and others. And we really encourage you to follow us on this 5G lab. These are really innovative spaces. And to come and talk to us, we can tell you not only about DC, but what is happening in New York, in California, and other places.
Great.
Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about the different innovations within 5G networks and sort of what will be enabled and what will be possible. But I think the flip side of all of these opportunities is certainly that there are concerns about the security of 5G networks. And this is something that we've heard a lot about in a variety of contexts from policymakers, from citizens, from businesses, and from carriers and providers as well. And so it's certainly top of mind, I think, for many people. And so it would be helpful to hear both of your perspectives on some of the challenges that we're going to see with 5G and how to address those, whether it's network security, cybersecurity issues with all of these connected devices, things like autonomous vehicles. When we have such critical applications that rely on the network, how do we ensure that they're safe, that they're protected, and that citizens and businesses can rely on these services with peace of mind that they won't be subject to vulnerabilities?
Thank you.
I've been talking too much.
So I feel like this is where academia comes in and we support really development. One, we have many professors at George Washington University where we're really focusing on how to make something for healthcare, for transportation, for smart cities, but make it safe as well. So I think 5G is going to accelerate some development in sort of like the supporting areas. And that is so important. Cybersecurity is something what I feel like we're not gonna have a third world war. It's gonna be cyber war. And that's what we need to focus on the most because we are so vulnerable already. If you just look at your home, probably all of you have Alexa or Google or Facebook, and they are there with you. That could be manipulated by someone. So how we address that concern and how we make that secure, that's where I think academia comes in, hackathons where we bring in our society, our community, and work together with academia and the government and basically businesses to create something new together and protect us and address our concerns. But I do think that it's not one area, it's many other areas have to work together.
I think that that's one of the areas certainly where we continue to gather information and provide information, and certainly the 5G labs will be a space where we will continue to do that and ensure that people come and learn about the safety and security of these networks. The first thing is to note that, as an overall statement, that 5G is certainly a step toward network security. So it leverages already the security elements that we already have in 4G. So it will be continue and will be built in a stronger security aspects. So I think that we, as a company, certainly always have a very strong comprehensive compliance program that looks at how do we comply with those of these safety and safety federal requirements before we implement and deploy any of our equipment. But I think certainly I encourage more dialogue, and I think this organization can certainly help us to bring more people to have more dialogue about the cybersecurity piece. And as the technology evolves and the network is created, that we can learn about the strengths of it in terms of leveraging the existing security components of it as the 5G evolves.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Just to add to this, one thing that I think it's already make 5G more secure. If you're thinking of 4G is able to have signals going much more farther than 5G. If you have a 5G little box in your building and something happens, you can shut that down right away. So that is sort of, to me, a peace of mind. If something happens around you, you are able to control little areas, streets, almost buildings, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we also know that several federal agencies continue to work on this topic to ensure that 5G networks are safe. And as I said, as a company, we have a very comprehensive compliance and always look at how we incorporate that into our systems and networks.
Great, thank you. Something I think that is potentially of interest too is if there are other communities that are seeing what's happening here in DC and other cities around the country that are getting 5G, what it's bringing to the city, the benefits, the economic impact, the social impact. What can those cities do to help promote both the carrier deployment and investment in their cities, but also to encourage their businesses and residents to embrace 5G? So essentially, are there actions or steps that they can take to incentivize 5G deployment in their cities?
You want to go?
Go ahead.
I'm not sure what I would say to that.
Okay. So the question is what jurisdictions and cities can do
so
to
if
promote
a
it?
mayor is watching today and
Right.
says, this looks great, how do I get this into my city? What's the answer to that?
Absolutely. First of all, it's collaboration with our with the industry. I always mention that this is about coming together as a community, as an industry, working collaboratively with the local governments to develop the framework that is needed to deploy and to understand what the cities need. But there are certainly best examples and best practices from other jurisdictions where we are deploying. And whether it is Verizon or any other carrier, I think it's important for these jurisdictions, these local governments, to enable a process, create a framework, enable a process that is streamlined, that does not slow down deployment, that recognizes the needs of communities and businesses to have access to this technology, so no community is left behind as this 5G network is built and deployed and becomes available and more available across the United States and the world. And embrace this opportunity to enhance economic and community development. I think that's the framework that helps us to create these opportunities and move forward in implementing and building a network. It's very important also as jurisdictions engage in this type of dialogue that they understand as well that we need to bring and build the infrastructure needed to deploy this technology. DC is a good example. We are working closely with the DC government to implement and build this infrastructure and this network that is needed to deploy the technology and bring the enhanced services. I think that's what I think is needed, this collaboration between government, industry, and community to ensure that we create the best approach.
So you talked briefly about this idea of a killer app. Essentially, what is the application for the network that's really going to make it take off? So, for example, when email hit, that's really what sort of was the catalyst for a lot of the consumer use of the internet as opposed to just business use. So what do you see for 5G as being either the killer app or the most exciting application that you see coming on this network?
I think we can predict, right? We are very excited about the future and what this will bring. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
We still don't know everything that this amazing 5G technology will bring. We know that it's going to transform the way we work and live and play. I would like to bring it back to public safety because it's so relevant to DC. I just look forward to seeing those apps that will be those solutions that will be announced today that were the winners. And also on October 16th, when we had the 5G, to see also how those businesses and entrepreneurs were able to create an app. That might be the next one, what we call the killer app. It might be another one, because this is still evolving. For one thing that we know for sure, as I said, this will transform in a very good way how we work, how we live, and how we play. But more of that, how businesses evolve and how residents have access to needed services, and how government will deliver those services to the residents and to their constituents. I think we need to see also that there will be some interesting and innovative developments in transportation, in education, and in healthcare. Those are going to be key areas. And we know that we will see some of those in DC, but for sure, in the very near future, we'll see some of that impact in public safety.
My 3-bet was really smart cities, transportation, education, and healthcare, 4. But one of the things that I see, in next year already, cars are coming out which are autonomous cars, relying on 5G. And if you just think of your typical day, I drive, guilty as charged, try to drive less. But when you have to drive, you get into the car is able to sense everything around you, being able to send something back to your house. So my house would know, hey, turn on the heat, turn on the light, maybe turn on my oven, or maybe sends an alarm to my daughter, hey, mom is coming home, better sit down and do homework, right? And then you get home, you eat your dinner, the light's gonna turn off after you're done. The water starts warming when it knows you're going to take a shower. And after that, it shuts off, so the house is smartly and efficiently work around your daily routine. So I see that as a huge support for everyone, and that will actually enable us to have an all-inclusive community, an all-inclusive society.
Great.
There's another area, quickly, if you don't mind, I can mention,
please.
is education, which I think is so important across the nation, but here in DC, it's another way in which we are investing resources to prepare the next generation of leaders and workforce to harness the power of this technology. We implemented a program called Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. It's all over the United States, but we have selected a number of schools here in the district that will experience the immersion of technology in the classrooms to enhance the learning of the students, the professional development of the teachers, but the capabilities of the school to use technology to better prepare the students to the careers of the future, including careers that will emerge as part of this 5G network. One of the things that we envision is creating the 5G labs in schools that can even enhance in a greater way how students are learning, building those skills that will prepare them for the future, but also how we transform the education and experience using technology. So that's another area where we can still envision a lot of progress and a lot of impact across the United States. But DC is one of those where we are investing. So follow us on that as well, because I think it's going to be very important and amazing to see how the students not only will learn what they can do with technology, but how it will enhance their lives. So follow that.
Absolutely. Great. So I think we can take a few moments and see if there are any questions from the audience. If we wanted to, I don't know if we need a microphone or if people can just stand up and talk loudly. Go ahead.
Hey, Adam Shapiro, small business owner here in DC. The chairman of the FCC has said there are 3 communities that are most resistant to 5G and small cells. And DC is one of them. And I think that's concerning because we're talking about the future of our community here. And at a national level, we're being seen as being very resistant. And a group of about 25 tech leaders in DC wrote a letter to the mayor in January, very cold day, snow was on the ground, saying, could you speed up this deployment? And here we are on a hot day in October, and we still don't have any small cells deployed in the public right-of-way that Mario mentioned. And so I wanted to make this group aware of that, ask if there's anything more that we as a community can do Because I don't think we want to be seen, or I'll speak for myself, I don't want to be seen, and my business can't survive being seen in a community that's not embracing this future technology.
Well, I can certainly talk a little bit about that. And thank you, Adam. I've known Adam for a long time, and thank you for that comment. I think you are expressing something really important, which is that we still have some challenges in the city for the deployment. I believe we're making progress, but we have to continue to deliver this message. And I think it's very powerful if people like the ones in this room deliver this message to the mayor, to the council members, to the ANC commissioners, and to other people in the city about how important it is to expedite this process, to streamline it, to ensure that we get the permits that we need to start deploying this technology in the right of way. We are doing our work in educating communities, collaborating with the government and others to ensure that people understand what we are proposing and what we are installing in those neighborhoods, etc. But when it comes to process, it's important that constituents, like the ones here, communicate with your representatives about the importance of expediting this process. As I said at the beginning, we don't want any community to be left behind. And we certainly don't want a process to slow down and not allow us to deliver this technology to other communities that we serve. So that's what I would say. Continue, lend your voices, continue to share the message and advocate.
Can we talk about the cost? Because what I'm wondering is, right now, for example, an iPhone 10 is like about $1,000, right? If you want a good one. And then, I mean, frankly, the cost of like having internet access at home is between $80 to $120, right? So when we talk about 5G, what are the costs going to be? And for example, a lot of people that I guess don't have that kind of money use public spaces, so public libraries, for example. A lot of people are like at the public library just to get internet access because they can't afford it at home. So when you talk about security, how do you address that? I mean,
Security, you mean the safety?
Security in public spaces, right? When everybody is like, I mean, they don't have their own servers. And actually, when you are in a public space, they say the network is not secure. Yeah. It's a public network. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to talk about
well,
cyber?
I'm not a cyber expert per se, but I really focusing on how to include everyone in everything what we do. One of the things that I think it's not just the industry who needs to focus on that. It is really the community leaders who need to make sure that network is available for everyone safely. So I think it's, again, it has to be a collaboration between industry, government, and academia to come up with a solution which support everyone. Because I lived in Silicon Valley for 20 years. In Silicon Valley, the public libraries were the places where homeless people lived. And homeless people are not, they are people just like us. They use the internet, they want to be connected, they just not in the right place in that time. Those people need that support. They cannot afford to have a mobile phone, and now the 5G connected mobile phone starts with $1,300 with Samsung and LG, and the iPhone is coming as well. But you need to make sure, you means every one of us, DC, Verizon, and the public to work together and create that solution for us. I would not put this on Verizon, hey, do it because I'm paying millions of dollars for you. It's more of like how we could do it together. And the other thing on public safety and security, I do think that this is a higher level as well. You have to go to Congress and Senate to make sure our regulations are up to date to our technology. Because what I see most of the time as a technologist, we have the technology and the regulations struggling to actually catch up with that. You know that from firsthand. Yeah. I do think that we need more educated technologists in Congress and Senate and making sure they're working with the industry and academia. I don't know if...
Okay.
So kind of piggybacking on what you were just asking, I wanted to ask you, Anne Marie, Ward 6, 7, and 8. There's not good communication there, and there hasn't been for a long time. And so things like iPhones, trying to get connectivity, and hold on. So like a 1X iPhone, you know, they don't have Wi-Fi. You can't get a Wi-Fi connection. You have to go to the store, like Sprint store, and you know, asking them about the 5G. And they're like, well, you've got to go and get a Samsung. And that doesn't really always meet the needs of deaf and hard of hearing. They're not friendly to our community. The iPhone is much more friendly to the deaf, blind. And so there isn't right now a 5G option. And Sprint doesn't have a 5G network that they're promoting at this time. So you mentioned about accessibility for all. And the costs can be very difficult for our community, working with video phones, which is how we can communicate with each other, and they're often freezing, piling, trying to get through to 911, and other issues. Can you address any of that for our community?
I can address it from two levels. I was a tech entrepreneur for 20 years, and the other hat what I have on, I'm in academia. So I start with the George Washington University Innovation Center. We do focus on universal design, and we focus on creating solutions which would include people who are not able to afford things, number one, or not connected right now. So we are looking at, you know, how we might provide some sort of solution to, for example, Apple, some ideas to design something which is affordable and everyone can use it. I always bring up the idea, my phone, what my grandmother has as well, she's unable to use it because she doesn't see it. How we might design this to a point where my grandmother could actually easily use this the same way as I am using it right now. This is something that we are focusing in a year now, and it's not just the phone, it's not just technology. If you look at, you know, Iris and Ron, I'm not sure how you do it. We had a human-centered design exercise, and I recommend for everyone to do that. Blindfold yourself and try to go 2 blocks without seeing. And then you realize how fortunate we are and how we are not taking care of the others around us. So my point on that, whatever we're designing, it has to be universal and inclusive. Include everyone in this community. So I hear your frustration, and I'm really hoping in academia we can do some sort of support and provide that support to the government, but also for industry.
Certainly, glad to hear that from her in particular, and how I'm going to take this back to our company, certainly as we work on product development, not only in 5G, but many other areas, and how we can create those equipment and devices that are user-friendly for all communities. So I think that's a good input, and I'm going to take this back.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is, for 5G, how does it relate to things such as population health in the medical field? What is the workforce development in the HR field, and also other communities as well?
I can start.
Yeah.
So we work with hospitals and doctors and nurses. Number one thing is telemedicine. With 5G, I just talked yesterday with a pediatrician she told me that now with telemedicine and with better internet connection, I can tell the mom, show me what you have in your fridge. And I was like, why do you need that? And then I got it, you know, if someone has allergies or you don't have the right nutrition, as a doctor, you would never know this in the office. But with telemedicine, you can actually look around the house and you can tell the mom, do not buy this brand. do not give this to your kids. Probably it's an allergic reaction. So that's number one, telemedicine. And I think it's very helpful in emergency situation and also with people with mobility problems. That's one. And then you were saying HR?
Yeah, HR.
Yeah, so I think that's another thing. Right now we are at the point where people can work from home. And I used to work for IBM. I was in Palo Alto, California, and my team was in Australia and New York. So you can actually make those team meetings and basically redistribute human resources where it needed. So I think 5G is going to really enable us to do this in the next level.
Absolutely. And that applies to not only workforce development and HR and working remotely. The same concept applies to healthcare and education. You can have virtual education, you don't have to be in the classroom. 5G will enable to enhance that education virtually. The same thing with remote healthcare. The possibilities in that area are going to be tremendous in terms of enhancing the way healthcare professionals provide services virtually using this technology. So it will have the same impact on people who need to work remotely because there may be other issues, transportation or other issues that are affecting the way they work. So being able to leverage that technology, work remotely, work from home or other locations. The connectivity, the capability will be enhanced by deploying this type of technology in those communities.
One more thing, if I may. I saw a development in medicine. So 146 million people annually don't get their surgery because where they live, they don't have the expertise, the expert surgeon to do that surgery for them. Now with 5G, they actually did, I don't know if you saw that, the surgeon was remote, I think in Madrid, and the surgery was in Asia. And basically with 5G, he landed that expertise to the surgeon who did the surgery, how to do, what to do, when to do. So I think it's really going to enable us to provide that healthcare what everyone deserves, but didn't have the access before.
Yeah, I want to say on there's a workforce development and deal with HR, right? And what it does, you got alternate and designated personnel and so forth.
Understand the question.
Sorry, could you repeat the last part of the question?
And what you got, and what this workforce experience does is automate and digitize HR.
With automation
How will
and
it change the things?
right.
Well, I think this is a bigger issue. When automation comes in, many jobs going to be replaced. But those jobs needs to be, somehow the people who did the jobs have to be retrained. So one of the things that we actually focusing on how we might provide training for people who are going to be losing their jobs because of automation. But if you think about it, 5G is bringing a lot of new jobs what you can take advantage on. So I think it's in a way almost a win-win situation. Many of the things, think about that, and like let's say 100 years ago, you couldn't put together a car without 10, 15, 20, I don't know how many people being there. Nowadays, probably they have 0 people on site to do that. So we are really, with this technology revolution, at the point where we need to look at different areas to train human and work there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other questions?
Just looking forward, what might 6G?
We were just talking about that before the panel.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
No, I mean, I think, it's something that I know that there are many people thinking about and looking at, and I think it's, it's a ways down the road perhaps, but I don't know if you have thoughts or if Verizon has any plans to roll out 6G anytime soon, but.
I can answer that one.
So actually 6G in the Scandinavian countries, in Finland and Sweden and Norway, they already experimenting on. And some professor in academia saying that by 2030, we're gonna have 6G. I'm a little skeptical on that, but we'll see.
Okay.
I think they were, sure, go ahead.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Erica Wortham. I work with Annamaria at GW. So I appreciate the thinking forward, but I'm wondering if we look back for a minute, Mr. Acosta-Velez, in terms of the evolution that you lined out at the beginning. It seems like maybe the transformation between 2 and 3 might provide lessons, because I feel like we're talking around sort of the nitty-gritty details of the particular challenges that people are worried about. Did that earlier switch from 2 to 3 give us any lessons that we can talk about in this context?
That's an interesting question. You talk about evolution from 2 to 3, you said, or from 1 to 2?
Yeah, well, was it as problematic? Was it the same kind of resistance that I feel like...
Oh, I see where you're going. I cannot answer whether there was the same level of resistance or whether people were skeptical or not about technology. I think at that point people were simply learning about what it could do, and the excitement about having these wireless devices available. What is happening now, we don't see it as necessarily challenges, as are opportunities to really help people understand. It is a new technology that is going to transform everything that we do. And we're still envisioning all of that it can accomplish. So what I know we can do now today and do it well is to ensure that people not only understand this evolution and why and how we were able to get from one to where we are today, and the benefits that each of those evolution steps from 1, 2, 3, 4, how they have enhanced our lives and our capabilities and businesses and government, etc. It is our work to ensure that people understand what the technology will do to enhance and bring these communities together to embrace it. Mm-hmm. So we're committed to ensuring that process continues. And as we said at the beginning, this is evolving, so there are still things that we cannot even define yet what this technology will be able to do, but for sure it will transform our lives in many ways.
Mm-hmm. May I add to that?
Sure, of course.
So my background is technology as a technologist and entrepreneur. What I can tell you, when you are working on a new technology, you don't give a what is around you. You're focusing on the technology. So to your point, most of the technologists who are working on 5 and 6G probably did not pay any attention what happened between 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and how it's affected lives, because they really single-mindedly focusing on that technology to be in the next level. So I think it's actually a mindfulness to bring in experts who bring that attention to the technologists and engineers, to bring in societal problems and solving these big problems with technology. So I think that's an ongoing issue with any kind of technology development.
I think we have time for one more question if there's.
Yeah, this question is for both presenters. In the last century, we started off with over-the-air radio, TV. We've now progressed with using a whole lot of the electronic spectrum. Cell towers, utilities are using smart meters. And now we're going to have autonomous vehicles using LiDAR and radar. Are there any population studies that are looking at the aggregation of all these electronic spectrum that's being utilized that might or might not affect us as a human species? After all, we are, our own electronic field. So where is this all going? I mean, are there any population studies at all that have said, yeah, we're okay with moving forward into this space? Or, just because we can do it, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. Mm-hmm. So I'd like your views, both of you.
Well, first, this has certainly related to this topic of health and safety. Mm-hmm. And as I said at the beginning, first of all, we want people to understand that this technology is safe. In companies like Verizon, as a carrier, and many others, we have comprehensive compliance program with FCC regulations, and the technology that we deploy not only complies with those standards, we understand that it is safe technology. Now, in terms of studies, there is an association that we all work with that is gathering a lot of research as we speak, has gathered a lot already. It's the CTIA, that's the name of it. If you go to ctia.org, there are a number of research studies there about health and safety of this equipment that people can learn from it about. It's sensitive, it's based on science and facts, not on necessarily fear or misconceptions about the technology. So I encourage people to go there and take a look. They have a number of one-pagers and a number of studies that have been published, and they're working on more. So it is a very good research to understand from a very scientific-based approach the health and safety aspects of deploying 5G in small cells. So that's what I would tell you to go ctia.org, and they have their links to additional research, such as there's a researcher in the University of Maryland that is an expert on health and safety of this technology. That website is gathering a lot of this research, so I think it's a good place to go to learn about it. It's a topic that requires a lot of time, certainly.
Just to add to it, academia, and we have the Milken School at George Washington University, they are looking into this. So you can look at academic publications. They actually working on this in an interdisciplinary group to see and look at all of the factors. So, but I think, communities have to be proactive and look out for yourself and for ourselves, because if you don't, who will, right?
Well, thank you all for the questions, and thank you in particular to our panelists today for this discussion on 5G and what it means for our community. And I think we're all excited to see what's to come in this exciting new network. So thank you so much.
Everyone, if you're interested in the DCX Innovation Challenge, I'm Tiffany Murray with the 5G Labs from Verizon. The pitch competition will be in this room during the lunch hour today. So come by, see the 3 applicants, the 3 finalists, and then we'll